Pause.
Oh, thanks. Oh, and thanks, Peter.
You're welcome.
We had a crisis right before this. It's like, it never goes perfect, right? So my Zoom wouldn't work, so I had to reboot. And then we had a glitch, a misspelling on one of our slides that PETA jumped in there. Her name's PETA, not Nicole, by the way. And she jumped in and changed it right away. But she's the one who sets this up for us and gets everybody to attend and sets it all up for us. So thanks, PETA.
Of course.
So we're going to take a peek behind the IT curtain. And the reason we do this is because a lot of times, as I'll get into in more detail, the executives in a company often don't really know what's going on with IT. So we're gonna throw some light on that. So first thing I want to talk about is our motivation for doing these webinars. You know, we talk a lot about the safety, especially of our small business community. So we're dealing with 3 cyber events with companies who reached out to us who have been hit just the last 2 weeks. It's hard to explain how prevalent it's getting. And Tim, our CEO, is really on the bandwagon and trying to help companies in any way that we can, whether we get paid or not, to help them be cyber secure. So we believe too that, you know, these foreign actors, I mean, we trace these breaches to China, Cuba, and Russia. So it's like, you know, Russia, obviously they can't contend with us in a military basis. So they're actually just going to attack us. And we see it every day. So we're trying to help. So the agenda here, you know, I'm going to do a little bit about CIS, very little, and then do the short presentation. And then we'll open up for questions. And generally this lasts about 30 minutes if you're wondering. And then people can hang around afterwards to have a conversation if you like. All right, so we have a cybersecurity culture, and we're actually certified by the Overwatch, which is a TISC 2020 certification. And so we take it very seriously because there are companies that are getting hacked through their IT companies. We're not going to be one of those. So anyway, I just want to say that we're secure and we want everybody else to be secure. So now I'm going to talk about this whole executive issue. So we call this a syndrome of the tail wagging the dog. I know, but you know, CEOs and management actively lead how their companies manage their operational departments, except for one. Financial, there are controls, there are procedures, same with operations. Business development has metrics. Marketing has processes. Human resources is very regimented because they have to be. But information technology, for the most part, just kind of exists on its own. And like I said, they're behind the curtain. A lot of the IT departments that we see are actually locked behind a cipher lock in what we call the computer clubhouse. So we're just going to shed a little light on how executives can take back control of their IT from a leadership perspective. So first, I want to talk about the problem. Whenever I go in and interview companies and try to figure out what's going on with their IT, every single time, the problem is communication. So first, we have a language gap. Like most people can't talk cyber or IT, you know, the jargon. And business leaders will avoid technical conversations. We all know that. And so there's also a lack of knowledge about effective management of IT operations. Like when it comes to sales or business development, most companies understand what the best practices are, how you get, you know, prospects, how you turn prospects into leads, how do you turn leads into business. There are processes around that. What we find is that a lot of people don't know how to manage their IT effectively. So we're going to talk about that. And every time I go into one of these companies, the IT guys say, well, we communicate, they don't read my emails. And the management always says, well, we never know what they're doing. So, you know, that's a problem. but we're going to show you how to fix that. Okay, leadership's role. We believe that the determination of your acceptable business risk should come from the top. You've got to know how much risk you have in your business from an IT perspective, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. A lot of people don't know. This conversation about cybersecurity shouldn't evolve or devolve into a technical conversation. You don't have those conversations for marketing or sales or accounting. In accounting, you're not talking about debits and credits in a strategy meeting. Same thing should be about IT, should be strategic. And so the high level strategic goals for IT and security should come from the top. So anyway, so there we have a process for executives kind of taking this back. And the first thing you need to do, and you do this about accounting, you probably do it, about other things, maybe personnel, but you need to trust but verify. That's why I have outside auditors in accounting. I think it's very popular now that the CEOs call in outside consultants who take a look at what is really going on with cybersecurity, how well the network's being managed, are things being patched, is it sloppy, is it tight? And so you have to go in and do that to come up with a plan of action. So trust but verify. So here are the 3 questions for your current situation. If you ask these 3 questions, it will probably dictate more questions. And so I put some of those underneath these questions just for context, really. So it's surprising that executives don't always ask the first question. Okay, if we're attacked, how long would we be down? Very simple question, and it should be answered perfectly. It can't be, well, it's got to be a very precise answer that you get from that. So, and you ought to define, your network has a lot of different elements, and some of them are more important than the others. So you need to look at all the different elements. Can we be down? Email? No. Maybe our CRM can be down for so much time. So you got to look at it in pieces. Second question is, are our systems and software up to date and equipped to protect us? This is the most common thing when we come into and do a vulnerability assessment, is we find that the systems aren't being updated. They're not being patched on a regular basis because the IT department's too busy, helping users and doing projects, and and they're usually thin. The IT departments have been shrinking. So they have equipment that's not under warranty. They have equipment that hasn't been set up properly. So you need to just ask the question, are we up to date? The third question is really important. It's like, do we have a documented plan of action in case something happens? You've got to have a plan. I think most people recognize that, and it has to be revisited and even tested. So, and there are a lot of resources that you have that you can get this done. A lot of this, if you have cyber insurance, your cyber insurance company will help you with a template. We can do that, but you need to have a plan of action in which everybody who's involved knows what to do. So for example, your marketing and communications, they need to know what to say to your vendors or your customers. So it's like, you need to have a step-by-step, here's what happens when we get hit. All right, so you ask the 3 business questions, right? So then it's up to you to take the leadership role and come up with the objectives. And we have 3 simple objectives here, which you can use. And once you think through these, again, that will spread out and you'll start to understand exactly what your strategic plan ought to be. First of all, the executives need to define the acceptable downtime in case of a cyber breach. So is it an hour? I mean, if you're an e-commerce site, you probably can't be down for minutes. Some companies are still able, because they keep paper, to operate maybe for a day or 2. But most companies, it's really about 4 to 8 hours is about the maximum. And now with remote workers, people get cut off if you're down. So this is more critical today than it's ever been. Second, prioritize the criticality of your business information. A lot of IT people really don't know what's the most important data. For example, do you have personal, private information on your customers? That's really important. What else needs to be protected? So, a lot of times you'll have, excuse me, some companies, can your salespeople, when one of them leaves, can they take all the information on your clients, So you need to really prioritize what systems are more critical and bring those up in order. And then last is define the acceptable liability to your employees, vendors, and customers. And this is really about relationships. Let's say you're down for a day or two. What are your customers going to think about that? How do you repair that relationship? Your vendors, if you get a bug and that cyber incident moves up your supply chain, how are you going to handle that? And that's really common now. I think that the Target breach was, kind of the one everybody talks about, because it was one of their HVAC vendors that actually opened the doors for the criminals. So define these business objectives, and you're well on your way to a strategic plan. All right. So what are the next steps? Once you've done these, you have 3 next steps. You need to do a vulnerability assessment to identify the gaps in an improvement plan, right? That makes sense. It's like, where are we? We believe that you should have a third party do this, but it's not absolutely necessary. You just have to question whether your people have the ability to really look at all the aspects of vulnerability. Second, develop your security incident plan. Define what's going to happen when, and I mean when, you get breached. So most of the breaches that we have and that we're seeing, the people who break in have been in the network for up to 6-8 months before they do anything. And the reason for that is that if you think about it, it's like some companies, these dark companies in the dark web, illegal actors, are good at safe cracking. They can break into the network, and that's all they do. So they go in and they break into 20, 30 companies, and then they bundle that and sell it to the real criminals who know how to go in, see what's valuable, and steal it or encrypt your files. So they're different actors that do that. So that's why there's a gap. So one company or illegal criminal is good at what I call safe cracking. They can get through the door, and then once they do, they move on to the next one, and they wholesale those and sell them to the companies that go in and steal. So when that happens, you need to have a plan of action. And then the last thing is a roadmap for improvement. So we call it a POAM, but it's a way that you develop what milestones and quarterly goals you have to constantly improve, because you can't put all this cyber in place immediately. It's really difficult to do. It's a lot of disruption on your company. So you need to do it over time. I'm going to show you in a slide here in a minute exactly how we do it, so you can have an idea how that's done. And the last thing is to dovetail the plan with a budget, right? Because cybersecurity is expensive. What we're seeing is that when you put the tools, and we call it the stack, but it's really if you think of a castle, you have a keep, you have a wall, you have a drawbridge, you have a moat. So when you do multi-layered cybersecurity, it costs money. Every one of these products that you have in your, as we say, stack, is usually charged per person per month, or per endpoint per month. So to really put in cybersecurity on a regular basis, you're probably talking about $30 to $40 per endpoint just for the software to do it. So you need to have that in your budget. Okay, so that's the way that you take back control. You know, it's very simple. You have 3 questions, 3 objectives, and 3 action items. So I wanted to add to that and give you a little context about the trends that are happening today in IT and cybersecurity support. So then when you go through that process, you'll have some idea what your options are coming out the other side. The first thing to show you is the Picasso man, which is kind of unique to our company. But the second thing is the IT management model. As I said earlier, people don't know how to manage IT. Well, there are very, very specific ways to do that. And then what co-managed IT is all about. The Picasso man. Actually, we did a puzzle of this and sent it out. It was pretty cool. If anybody wants a puzzle, just let me know. So this is sort of 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. You know, most companies had some computer guys, generalists. You know, they're like 5% CIO, part IT director, part admin, part engineer, part help desk, part analyst. And so they're juggling all these different roles. And then now, recently, we've thrown in cybersecurity and compliance. So cybersecurity, you just can't be sloppy. You know, if you're sloppy, you have a whole, you know, it's like having a window open, even though your door is locked, you know, so you have to be very, very persistent, have great procedures to get this done. So it's very hard for a computer generalist having all these roles to do that. So, you know, the days of, you know, knowing everything as an IT guy are over. You know, we have cyber guys, we have network guys, we have admin guys, we have help desk guys. So it's, you know, you need to have a lot of different roles in your IT department today. So next is the IT, we call it the management maturity model. Excuse me. I didn't make this up. You know, it's really funny that all of the organizations that accredit IT companies and IT processes agree on this, that there are 5 levels of maturity. And the higher you get, the lower your risk level. So most companies, and traditionally, have been in the reactive mode. Right here, the first one, excuse me. So they're just reacting to what's going on a day-to-day basis. Then they get more efficient, hopefully. And that's where you have a systematic approach to solving known issues and dealing with daily tasks. So you know what you're doing. You have process in place somewhat. For example, you might have complete documentation of all your assets so that you know what you're dealing with. And so that's where you're using an approach to make you more efficient. The next step, and this is where everybody needs to be, excuse me, at bare minimum. It's where you're taking a proactive approach and you automate. There are tools out there, network management tools. So today for us, we have computers managing the computers. And I'm talking about updates and all those kinds of things that are repetitive. So once you get to be proactive, then you start having some understanding of where you are in terms of cybersecurity, and you quit having all these day-to-day problems popping up all the time. All right, then you start to have metrics to be aligned. And SLAs, service level agreements, are an understanding between the users and the IT department as to how quickly things can be fixed, how often things should go down, when do you do maintenance, all of those kinds of things. So the last is where you achieve operational excellence and you're really on a strategy path. And it's hard to get there, but I'll show you how we do it here in a second. Excuse me. Boy, Peter, this recording is going to be great, huh? With me coughing. So here's how we do it in terms of a management maturity model. So we have to have a mature model because we manage thousands of individuals in, you know, many companies. So we have to be this way. So what we do in month one, and this is how in 1 quarter you can become much more effective and reduce your risk. So we do it by onboarding. The first thing we do is document everything. We have ticketing workflows that are automatic. We do remote monitoring, and we make sure everybody's backed up. Then in the second month, we verify what the disaster recovery risk is. Like I said earlier, how long can you be down? We'll verify that. EDR with a managed SOC. EDR is like antivirus 2.0, which is connected to a 24/7 security operations center. So it's like connecting your home alarm system to the call center that reacts whenever you have an incident. Same thing in cybersecurity. It's not very expensive. And then of course the security foundation management. What happens when you have alerts? What happens when someone gets hit? What happens with phishing? So you need to have that all under control. And then once you kind of get things going, you should have a security awareness campaign. And that's where you send out people invitations to do like 15-minute cyber awareness trainings, and keep track of that. And very, very good software for doing that. And then also sending out fake phishing emails so that you would try to entrap people and get them to click on things they shouldn't click on. And then it comes back and says, hey, you did the wrong thing here. And so when they do that, they have to take a little more training. But that's actually kind of fun because people, like to make fun of people who click on the wrong things. So then a vulnerability security assessment. You start doing continual approval. You have a VCIO strategic roadmap and a budget. And you talk about zero trust. And that's where you make sure that any machine, any equipment, any person only has access to only what they have to have access to. So it's zero trust. You don't trust anybody. So for example, a lot of times the rights to certain files and things change over time. People change their roles in the company. And so someone might come out of admin and go into HR. Do they still have the administrative rights? So you have to really start looking at that on a detailed basis. So that's how you do it in a quarter. And if you want, we did a whole webinar on this. So, I'm going very quickly, but if you have more questions about how you do this, just let me know. The last concept, which is really, really popular, is called co-managed IT. So, if you have a Picasso man that you trust, has been around for a long time, what people are doing is attaching to a partnership with a company that has all the roles that you need, the cyber roles of monitoring, the updates, and all those kinds of things, and take that off the plate of your internal people. And that way your internal people can focus on things like your business applications, training for your people, making sure that everybody has the rights that they need, the access that they need, all of those kinds of things. So the way it works, co-managed IT. So you have to go through these lists of typical things that are done and decide which ones that your team does and which the outsourced team does. So if you think about it, the more closely things are about your business, the more your team should do those things. The things that are just technical, mundane, keeping the lights on and the doors locked, that should probably be outsourced. So for example, on your team, employee training, initial troubleshooting, business application support. Most businesses have an application that's specific to their industry. Maintaining policies and procedures, managing where the data is, who has access to what, maintaining data privacy, and also all your online media. Outsource, these are the easy things to outsource. You can have a VCIO. You couldn't afford one of those all on your own. You have the IT maturity management model, which is easily put in place. You have the cybersecurity stack I talked about, 24/7 monitoring, patch management, remote remediation of issues. And then, one that we do, and this can go either way, we like to do onboarding and offboarding of employees, and we apply all of the security processes to those people who come on board. One of the most common things that we see when we go in and do an assessment is that a company might have 40 people working, but we'll go in and in their Active Directory, their security directory of users, they'll have twice that. And the reason is that a lot of times when people leave the company, their accounts aren't removed. So we like to handle that. And then IT vendor management, if your internet's down, who does that? Who calls? Who sits on the 800 number? Who reacts to that? And a lot of times your people won't have time for that. But we deal with vendors at a much higher level and develop relationships with them. So it's a lot easier for us to get things done. So those are the three things I think that you needed to know about kind of the current trends. Just realize that there are no more Picasso men. It's really hard for them to do all the things that are needed today in terms of cybersecurity. And then understanding what maturity model means, understand that it's very well documented just Google that. And there'll be a lot of information on how IT should be managed, especially for cybersecurity. And then if you can't do it on your own, and it's likely that you can't, then you can go to COMIT, we call it, or co-managed IT. So we've gone through. And so I think I'm right on time. We're talk about the things that you can take away, key takeaways. The business objectives should come from the executive suite. I think we went through that pretty well. It's vital that executive level members know and understand the right questions to ask. And I think we've given you that. Aligning IT and cybersecurity through meaningful discussions is a little easier than you think. And I think the process that we define really works. Co-managed IT services provide increased security, expertise, and affordability. A co-managed IT contract is probably cheaper than adding an IT person, and you get so much more. And last, a proactive and mature IT management model is critical for cybersecurity. So if you're sloppy, your IT is sloppy, that you're just never going to be cyber safe. So we equate the management and the processes around IT with cybersecurity. So, Peter, you there?
I am here.
Can you think of other takeaways? Anything I miss?
No, I think this covers high level, just what you're seeing works, in terms of a partnership and how IT should work successfully with business leaders, and the how to go to the discussion table, and really what should be discussed to make sure that IT is working, and things aren't siloed, where you have business leaders, they have their goals and strategies, and IT is over here in the dark room in the corner, just
Well, or
doing your thing.
a lot of times the outsourced IT is, a lot of MSPs have been purchased by large companies, and they lose their character, and so you never know what's going on there. And like I said, the three breaches we've been dealing with, one was $1 million. Another one was a very small company. They were trying to get $40,000 out of their QuickBooks. And we had another one that was about in the $100,000 range, where someone's trying to go in and change their ACH from a vendor to their own. So they're mimicking one of the vendors and sent them an email telling them to change their ACH and I think they lost $40,000 or $50,000 in one check. So,
Ooh,
so anyway, it's everywhere.
yeah.
So anybody have any questions? Does the chat work?
Yeah, I've been monitoring the chat and let everyone know if they had any questions or comments, they could post them in here. But what I'll do is I'll put your email here in the chat if anyone wants to grab it. Customize. And yeah, if after you all log off here and you think of a question, or you want the recording or any of the resources that Brian talked about, just reach out with a quick email. I'll put the Customize website here as well. There are some good resources on there in terms of blogs, on the LinkedIn page. Brian here is always putting out helpful tips and resources, links to the video recordings. And we do this about once a month.
Right.
So, right now, the trending topic is what's going on out there in the hacker world and how businesses can protect themselves. But we'll change it up, once in a while, just to reflect what's going on in the industry and making sure that we're sharing the information out to businesses of how they can better protect themselves and what they can do with regards to their technology and IT.
Sounds good.
All right.
All
Well,
right. Thanks, everybody.
and thanks for joining us. Look out for some emails, and happy holidays, happy new year when it rolls around. Oh, Lori was asking if the slides will be emailed. Yes, we will send those out to you, Lori. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
feel free to follow up. We don't charge for, conversations.
yeah.
And we like to have them.
Yeah, we do. If you can tell, we like to chit chat. It's fun. All right, let me go ahead and stop.